Nvidia are the Hermes of this market. They are the best. There will be, and they're staying ahead. So that's really important. The competition will always be there. It'd be a very odd market if there wasn't competition. And the chip market, I've been following it for almost 30 years. It's always been these ins and outs and these competitive currents. But for now, Nvidia, it's fairly obvious that they make by far the best equipment, and that will keep demand very high. This is a company that has now, in the last 3 years, doubled revenues every year, which is pretty much unprecedented at the scale they're at. So that tells you something about the demand for their products.
I see your exposure to TSMC and ASML, obviously the key players in this chip space, obviously, but you don't really have an exposure to the memory side. Is there a particular reason why? And obviously, when it comes to TSMC, it's really no-brainer. It doesn't really have formidable competitors out there, Intel and Samsung. Do you consider them as potential buy at this point in time?
So our process is all about identifying the long-term winners. The memory market is so fast-moving, it's so commoditized. Ultimately, you might make money on a 3 to 6 month view. My time frame is 10 years, so our average holding period is 8 years and plus. I can't sit here today and say who I think will be the long-term winner in memory. It's such a difficult market to sustain a competitive advantage in. However, I have much greater confidence in the ASMLs. Back in the early days of my career, it was the Japanese who led that market, the Nikons, the Canon. But with EUV, ASML literally moved the lens and have dominated that market. Yeah. So it is a quasi-monopoly, as you say, and that's a fantastic place to be as an investor. But both TSMC and ASML have management teams who think in decades, and that's exactly what I want. I think the flash guys, absolutely, it's for some market participants. It's just not for Baillie Gifford.
Do you worry about the health of the strength of TSMC's monopoly position down the road? If you're really thinking long term, do you think about geopolitical risks?
Well, I mean, that's got to be on your agenda, because any company which has such a dominant position as that, there will be those who are concerned. But many people have tried to replicate TSMC, but it's impossible. And you see what they've done in Arizona. It's taken TSMC to replicate TSMC in the United States. And I believe that they were even, when they were constructing the fab there, they were just very unhappy with the quality of American build. So they brought over all the engineers from Taiwan to do that, to get to their very, very high specification.
Yeah, there were water problems too, I think, with the build.
Exactly.
So let's bring up TSMC again and take a look at the chart. We're at, what, 1445 NT or so. Do you believe the stock at these levels is actually undervalued? It's ramped about 40% in the last 12 months, I know. And I asked this question in this context. When you think about the relationship between TSMC and Nvidia, which we just talked about, a lot of people might argue, take a step back and go, well, hold on here. Isn't TSMC actually more important than Nvidia? Because if there were no TSMC, there would be no Nvidia.
I mean,
nobody else can make Nvidia, can make Nvidia chips, at least yet.
Yeah. If TSMC were not located on the island of Taiwan, it would be much more highly rated. There's no doubt in my mind. There is a political discount. There is, it comes back to the comments on the geopolitical risk, but it is one of the best companies in the world in terms of its execution, its strategy, it's ability to do what it does. And as you say, it is so central. Every time you read about AI or you think you hear some of the different developments, all roads lead back to Taipei.
Yeah.
So, which is a great position to be in again.
Well, great position, but in terms of an accident of geography, being less than 100 kilometers away from the south of China, I think does not help, right?
Exactly.
So interesting, this whole thing about there being a geopolitical discount on TSMC. Let's get back to memory, if you could, very quickly. You're saying you don't really like the flash guys, right? What about names like Samsung, right? Because you can't have AI chips without memory, and these guys just, I think, hiked prices by 60%, which seems to tell me they think they have pricing power.
I agree, and it's not that I don't like them. I run a 40-stock portfolio, so you have to make trade-offs and make. But Samsung, I like companies which are focused and which are clean. With Samsung, I can buy that, but I'm also buying a whole host of other businesses, and I have to get my head around, some of those. So it's just not as pure a play in my book.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Let's talk a little bit, further up the food chain, chip food chain, the chip equipment makers. We were showing folks names like ASML in the Netherlands, etc. I mean, in terms of Nvidia competition, right, and China, that's where the main choke point is. I think you would agree, right?
Yeah.
They can make downstream the actual chips, not as good, not as fast, etc., as the best in class out of Nvidia. It's the machine tools, right? The lithography machines where, beg, borrow, or steal, they just have not been able to come up with an alternative to buying from ASML, which is why probably half the revenue comes from China right now.
Yeah, and that has remained the hardest part, and that is the most scientific part. It's where when you look at ASML's supply chain, these guys have relationships with Zeiss and some of the others that go back 20, 30 years. Yeah. So you can throw a ton of capital at it, but it's really, really hard to replicate. And China's not alone. Japan tried for multiple years to do this, but at that very apex of the chain, it's not impossible. Maybe in 5 or 10 years' time, we're sitting here and we're talking about a Chinese lithography maker. But that still seems a big leap.
So ASML is sort of like the Nvidia of lithography. I got it. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see your exposure, Mark, to some of these consumer names. I mean, European luxury and the likes of Netflix, Meituan, Kuaishou, Moutai. I mean, what do you look at when you decide which companies to get into when you have all these consumer names? When it comes to consumer exposures, and what is really the key metric here?
Yeah, I love companies that are very, very hard to replicate. So I would say something like a Moutai, to me, is a luxury brand. It's in that bracket of Hermes. We own Moncler as well, which is, there are lots of competition, Bossy Deng and others, but they're not Moncler. I think Netflix is pretty unique. We've owned that for over a decade. If you went back through most of our ownership, people have worried about Disney are coming for them, HBO are coming for them, XYZ are coming for them, but actually Netflix is the guy that's been the hardest to replicate. And I also look for companies that can adapt. I think Netflix has shown tremendous adaptability. If you go back to 2022 when the Ukraine-Russian situation started, Netflix had a drawdown of close to 75% then. But it wasn't anything operational. It was to do with the geopolitics of the time. And it was a fantastic opportunity, actually, in the company, because the company just carried on doing the same thing. They adapted. They closed down some of the multiple logins. They added the advertising tier. But it's all about the content at the end of the day. So it's really hard to compete with Netflix.
So, Mark, it sounds to me like your strategy is to look for what statisticians call sort of N of one names or stocks, right? You mentioned Moncler, so the down jackets for I don't know how many thousand they sell for, but and also Moutai, the Chinese liquor maker. But I mean, moats, barriers to entry. Yeah. I'm not big into manufacturing. How hard is it to make a down jacket? I mean, you can get one at Decathlon for a tenth of the price, right, or even less, right? And Moutai, isn't that just like paint thinner? What do they do so differently?
Yeah, this is the conversation. None of these things are that hard to make, or a handbag. You and I, we could probably get some capital. We could come up with a handbag between us. We might need some help on the design.
Okay, but what's the but? What's the rub here?
The but is that it's not a Birkin, it's not a Kelly, it's not a Moncler. It is the brand, ultimately, isn't it? And that's where the cachet is. That there is a waiting list for Birkin and Kelly bags for a reason. That they are the very apex of their industry. These companies I look for entrepreneurs who understand that, who cherish their goods, who don't discount. You know, one of the real links between Moncler and Hermes, you'll never get that on discount. You have to pay the full price, and you have to wait often. But it makes no rational sense. I agree with you. There will be people in Singapore who wear Moncler jackets, despite, as a Scotsman, I'm finding the temperature pretty high here. But you know, you go all over the world, and people crave these things, and I think that's part of human nature. And I think it's a great thing as an investor that you can observe and exploit.